Hello there, and welcome to Murder Most British. I'm Zach.
Hey, welcome. I'm Rachel.
Yeah, back again, baby. Let's go.
Yep. We got a good case coming up. Well, most of them are pretty good, interesting cases. So,
well, this one has. It didn't directly. It was a part of the conversation of, executions and that. So, yeah.
Well,
really
this week we're heading to Ireland, is it?
Yeah, Northern Ireland. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, back in the 60s.
Yeah. Well, let's find out about this case.
Yep, and also, I mean, it was really good to see some of the stuff with, hey, they were really talking about capital punishment and stuff like that around the time, and whether to keep it going or not.
Yeah.
And this was a part of that conversation, and the last hanging.
So the last hanging was in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep, Robert McGladdery.
Well, in my view, they should bring it back for certain crimes, but that's just my view. I mean,
yeah, it's one of those things. It's never stopped having the debate whether to have capital punishment or not, because mainly a big part of that is what if, because we do see a lot of cases that are miscarriages of justice.
Yeah, and
you accidentally execute the wrong man or woman.
Yeah, like over in America, obviously, they still have capital punishment, or the death penalty, should I say. But we've seen, obviously, it's completely different over here compared to America. Obviously, they have a longer sentencing compared to England, to be fair. A crime that happens over there, same crime here, man. Like... They literally get life without parole, and over here it's like they say life and it's 15, 20 years, and you're like, well, hang on a minute. Okay, then they can just apply for parole.
The parole board still has to say, yes, you are no longer a danger to society.
I definitely think we should have that. I'm not sure if we do, actually. If anyone knows, let me know. Saves me Googling it. But whether we in England, UK, whether we actually have like a life without...
Yes.
Oh, we do. Sorry, scrap that. Whole life term, innit?
Whole life order. Yeah. We've had those already.
Fuck's sake. All right, yeah, come on.
So before we begin, though, a small request from us.
If you enjoy listening to our true crime stories that we bring you, please give us a like, a follow, a 5-star rating. That was so good. It also, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Murder Most British, and on Facebook at MMB Podcast.
You can also join us on the Public Crypt Chat, our free Discord channel, where you can talk about cases, share theories, and read the latest news from the archive. And you can talk to us.
Yeah, mainly Zach, because I'm still getting used to the whole Discord thing, but I do go on there.
She's old.
So you could drop a message on there, chat with us directly, which would be great. But all your support helps the archive grow and ensures that no story is ever forgotten. This episode contains discussion of murder, sexual violence, severe physical assault, and execution. So some material may be distressing to some listeners, so listener discretion is strongly advised.
So now let's get to the story.
So before the road bends towards Upper Damolly, the street lights stop. It's the stretch out by Damolly Crossroads in the early hours of Saturday the 28th of January 1961. In places like Newry, that's normal. Light fades a lamp at a time, and the ground beyond is trusted because it has always been. People cross it without thinking. One such place lay just beyond the edge of the town. No sign, no warning, just winter air and the assumption that morning would come as usual. What happened there didn't announce itself, but it set in motion a chain of events that would reach far beyond Newry. To understand how, we have to go back to the town before it knew what it was about to carry.
Newry is in County Down, just a few miles from the border with the Republic of Ireland. It's close enough to that border that it always feels nearby, even when no one's thinking about it. Newry is a working town. Life runs on routine. People going to work, running errands, heading into town and back home again. Once you leave the main roads, the streets narrow quickly, And not far after that, the countryside takes over. Not as scenery, but as the place you suddenly find yourself standing. In winter, it gets dark early. The cold sticks around. You feel it in the air, and in the way people plan their evenings.
Upper Damolly sits right on that edge, where the town begins to thin out. Houses give way to open fields. Streetlights fall away. Roads bend and meet without much signage, navigated more by memory than by markers. Crossroads exist because people pass through them, not because anyone thought to label them. The kind of place that locals used as a drop-off point, close enough that you'd think that you would already be home. During the day, it feels ordinary. At night, it feels separate, not far away, but just cut off in a way that is easy to underestimate.
Yeah, just a small town. Like, they didn't really make the roads. The roads were made by footfall and carts and cars and stuff. You know, it's
carts in the 60s.
Carts in the 60s. But, you know, it's probably been there for, hundreds and hundreds of years.
Like an old sort of little town.
Yeah. And, like, it's just been carved out by the people of this way is this way, and there's the crossroads, and this goes here, and you don't, and everybody knows where it goes.
They would just know the area anyway. They would have walked it many times, growing up as kids, and, so, yeah, I don't think there would have been much need for signage for the local people, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, in 1961, Pearl Gamble lived in Upper Damolly. Hopefully we're saying that right. It seems pretty straightforward.
Your accent, it sounds like you said Polderly. But it's Pearl.
Pearl. She was 19 years old, and she worked as a shop assistant and lived at home with her parents and her 3 sisters. Her life followed a steady, predictable pattern. In a household like that, people noticed things. They knew when someone should be coming through the door. They noticed who was out and who was back. If someone didn't come home when expected, it stood out. Pearl wasn't on the edge of town life. She was right in the thick of it. The kind of young woman people fully expected to see again the next day.
Yeah, definitely. I think we all have our own little routines, don't we? And, each household, our household, your household.
Yeah.
I definitely feel that we have our routines that everybody that we live with or knows us.
Yep. They're supposed to be coming in at this time. They get off work this time. Yeah.
I mean, hence with you coming in, like 5:30, I'm like, right, dinner ready for 5:30, so it's, people's patterns. But Robert Andrew McGladdery also lived nearby in the Damolly area. He was born on the 18th of October of 1935, which made him 25 in the winter of 1961. He was unemployed labourer and lived with his mother. In the area, he wasn't a stranger. People knew who he was. By that point, McGladdery already had a reputation locally, though, the kind that made people wary. So when people referred to him as a bad lad, it wasn't vague. It was a reputation that had been building for years.
Every town's got one of them.
Yeah. I think every place that someone lives knows a bad lad.
Yeah. Well,
or just someone that is mischievous, and causes a bit of havoc.
Yeah.
Maybe a fighter or someone,
Mm. Well, Pearl and McGladdery weren't friends. They were distant cousins, related but not close. In a place like Newry, that kind of connection wasn't unusual. Family names repeated, family lines crossed. You didn't have to go looking for someone to end up in the same place as them. Geography handled that part. The town did the rest.
Yeah. Well, social life at the time often revolved around organised nights out, especially dances. One of those places was the Henry Thompson Memorial Orange Hall. People went because it was there, because it was familiar, because it was part of the weekly routine. Years later, the building would be replaced by a petrol station beside the telephone exchange. But in 1961, it was just a Friday night dance hall, somewhere with music, lights and familiar faces.
Yeah, going to the dance on a Friday night.
Probably back then, the place to go, in this town. Obviously, probably wouldn't have been much else there. So it was the weekend thing to do, So
yeah, be there or be square, baby.
Yep.
And also, from this point on, the Henry Thompson Memorial Orange Hall, we're just going to call it the Orange Hall, just to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that was a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah. So, okay. Friday dances weren't something people planned weeks ahead because your friends would be there, because it broke the working week cleanly in two. There wasn't nothing unusual about deciding to go. Nothing about it felt dangerous or out of place. These nights had happened before, and that Friday was assumed to be no different.
Well, on Friday, the evening of the 27th of January of 1961, the Orange Hall in Newry filled it for its regular dance. Inside, it was warm, packed bodies, cigarette smoke, music starting up as people arrived. Outside, the town was cold and dark, already settled into winter night. People came in coats and scarves, greeted faces they knew, and took their places on the floor as the evening got underway. That same evening, McGladdery had already been moving around Newry. He spent much of the day drinking with his friend William Copeland, starting at Hollywood's bar on Hill Street. From there, they moved on to McGee's on Merchant's Quay, and later on to the British Legion.
Oh, having a little pub crawl.
I used to go to the British Legion.
Yeah.
Yeah, many years ago.
Do some pub crawls in your time?
Most of it was like older people there, though.
Yeah.
So I didn't go often. No, it's mainly because if I remember, my great-gran used to hand out poppies, go and sell poppies for the British Legion. So I'd sort of toggle down with her to the British Legion to take the money and just sit there and have a...
You always seem to be going off with your grandparents.
Oh, God. They were everywhere. My nan taking us to jumble sale. I think that was the in thing for back in, the way early 90s, late 80s, early 90s.
Nothing wrong with going to a yard sale. Tell you what, you find some good stuff. Shoot, we go now.
Man, I used to be embarrassed going to a jumble sale.
Nah, man, you find some good stuff. Just like going to charity shop.
Yeah.
I found some good stuff, man.
I think the older you get, the more you actually don't care. You're just like, yeah, bargain.
Yeah.
But...
oh, man, Mom and I, we'd go...
I think back in the 60s, around this time with this case, they would have been quite popular things, and it's kind of like a swap shop, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, so...
let's get back to the story.
Yeah. The guys, they separated briefly, then met again and continued on. By the time they arrived at the Orange Hall, both men were noticeably drunk. I would assume after
all day drinking.
A day of pub crawling.
Yeah.
They got there late, about an hour after Pearl had already arrived. People remember McGladdery wearing a light-colored suit, and he drank, watched the room, and joined in the dancing, lingering on the edges before moving closer.
Well, Pearl Gamble had come to the dance with friends and with her boyfriend, Joe Clydesdale.
That is a name.
Joe Clydesdale.
Come on.
That's a cool name. Well, she knew the hall and faces inside it as she moved easily through the night. At least twice, she did dance with McGladdery. Later, people recalled that she didn't look comfortable, though. One person remembered him trying to pull her in close, his head bent towards her face. While Pearl kept turning away, it didn't cause a scene and the music didn't stop, but it passed the way the moments like that often do, noticed by a few but ignored by most. He's getting flirty.
Yeah. Right, but she's got a boyfriend.
But, I mean, he's drunk and,
Yeah, but come on, man, don't be a creep. Well, as the night went on, McGladdery stayed close to the action. At one point, he approached the band and asked them to play It's Now or Never by Elvis Presley. The song was played and the dance continued. Near the end of the night, witnesses recalled him standing by the door, hands clasped, no longer dancing.
Well, by the early hours of Saturday morning, the dance at the Orange Hall was winding down. Chairs scraped back, coats were pulled on. People drifted out in small groups as engines started and headlights briefly lit faces and walls before turning away. Outside the hall, Pearl spent the last moments of the night with her boyfriend, Joe. He later said that they had danced the final dance together and walked out side by side. They stood briefly near the entrance before a car arrived from the Belfast Road. Pearl got in. Joe watched the car pull away. It was the last time he ever saw her alive.
McGladdery had already left, sometime around 1:30 a.m. He stole a bicycle belonging to a local man, John McClanahan, and rode away from the town center. He didn't go home. Instead, he headed out toward Damali Crossroads. As he moved away from Newry, houses thinned, streetlights fell away, and open fields took over.
Well, Pearl left the area around 2:30 a.m. Travelling with friends, a male friend offered her a lift towards Upper Damali, but didn't take her all the way home. The car stopped near the crossroads close to her house, a place that she knew by heart. Pearl stepped out. The car drove away, headlights faded into the distance, and the sound of the engine disappeared. She was alone on the road, with fields on both sides and darkness all around her.
After the car had gone, McGladdery attacked Pearl. She was struck in the face with enough force to break her nose, stopping her before she could react or run. The attack began on the road, but didn't stay there. McGladdery dragged her away from the junction and into a nearby field, pulled off the route she would have taken home. There was no buildings nearby, no lights, and no one close enough to hear what was happening.
Oh, such a scary sort of situation.
Especially in the middle of the night when,
and
nobody's
so
out there.
To home,
And everybody's probably asleep. Nobody's really up at that time.
Such a sudden thing. You've literally just got dropped off and you're attacked within, 10 minutes, not even. That's scary. Well, whatever drove it, what followed was about control. In the field, Pearl's clothes were removed. Items were taken from her body and left behind, scattered near the crossroads and across the surrounding ground. The stripping became part of the violence itself, exposure and domination, carried out in a place where no one could see and no one could intervene.
Pearl was killed by strangulation and stabbing. Her own scarf was used to cut off her breathing, and she was stabbed with the tang of a file. The violence was close and sustained. After she was dead, her body was not left where she fell. It was dragged or carried across 3 fields, farther from the road until it reached a clump of whin bushes at a place known as Weir's Rocks. There, she was left, partly concealed.
Afterwards, the bicycle was taken back toward the road. It was ridden a short distance along the Damali Road and abandoned just inside a field near the junction with the Belfast Road. Close enough to be overlooked, but far enough not to lead directly back to its rider. McGladdery's shoes were lost during the struggle, and he had to make the journey home barefoot.
By the time daylight approached, the night's traces were being dealt with. Blood-stained clothing was removed and washed away. Neighbors later said that they noticed McGladdery unusually early in that morning, carrying water into his house. When he was seen later, he appeared scrubbed exceptionally clean. His skin reddened as if it had been washed raw. Yeah, he's trying to rub all that away. He's, trying to rub the crime away.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's winter as well, so, it would have been possibly a bit muddy because, the grass is dead by then, by the winter. There's not much grass and
he's also muddy, probably trying to clean up everything he can.
Yeah.
So, because he's living with his mom, and his mom's going to be like, waking up and going, what the heck's going on here?
Look and be like, why is your clothes all this, or why has this been ripped? And do you know what I mean? So, trying to get rid of every evidence that he's been up to something. The Saturday morning began quietly. In the Gamble home, Pearl's bed hadn't been slept in. Her mother, Margaret, noticed the untouched sheets and the lack of any sign that Pearl had came in during the night. But she didn't panic. She assumed that Pearl had stayed with a friend, the way that young people did sometimes after dances. It was the easiest explanation, the one that let the morning continue. Kettles were filled, curtains were opened, breakfast routines carried on. Nothing yet felt really wrong.
Later that morning, the first alarm was raised. Farm laborer Bob McCullough, he was working near the upper Damali crossroads when he came across women's clothing scattered across the field. Some of it was bloodstained. Disturbed by what he saw, he went to the nearest house to use the telephone. That house belonged to the Gamble family. Inside, Pearl's mother was shown the clothing. She recognized it immediately. In that moment, uncertainty ended. Police were called.
Ugh, how horrendous. Imagine, the nearest house, and it's, you take, he's took obviously clothing with him.
Mm-hmm.
For the mum to see that, all sorts would have been going through her mind at that point.
And poor Bob, he's just like, I found this oh my gosh,
Yeah,
and
he weren't to know that it was, that family's daughter. So, horrendous. Well, searches spread out across the surrounding ground. Officers and local volunteers moved slowly, covering field after field. By late afternoon at 4:50 p.m, Pearl's body was found in a stubble field at Weir's Rocks, about half a mile from the crossroads. She had been dragged or carried across several fields before being left there, partly hidden in wind bushes. She was naked except for her stockings. The distance alone showed the attack hadn't ended at the roadside. Someone had moved her. Time and effort had followed the assault.
Once the search was complete, attention turned back to the Orange Hall in Newry. It was the last place Pearl's movements could be fixed with certainty. Police began speaking to people who had been at the dance. Most described the night as ordinary. Pearl had been there with her friends and her boyfriend, Joe. Nothing about her behavior stood out. There was no argument, no disturbance, nothing that explained what had followed.
Several witnesses did recall Pearl dancing twice with Robert McGladdery, though. On its own, it meant little. It didn't suggest guilt, but it did establish contact with a narrow window of time. Police also confirmed that the last known movement of the night, Pearl had been given a lift and dropped near the upper Damali crossroads at around 2:30 a.m. So everything after that point was unknown. Everything before it could be checked.
McGladdery's own account quickly became a problem. He told police he had left the dance about 1:50 a.m., wearing a dark suit, and walked home alone. Other witnesses said he left earlier, closer to 1:30 a.m. P.C. Adams, who had checked the hall during the night, remembered McGladdery wearing a light-colored suit. These differences mattered. Time and clothing were the only things that could place him inside or outside the critical window. His version didn't sit comfortably alongside what others had recalled.
Another police witness fixed McGladdery's appearance at a specific moment. Detective Constable Gerard Tom said he had been at the door of the Orange Hall at around 1:50 a.m. and spoke briefly with McGladdery. He recalled him wearing a light blue suit and a red tie. He noticed no injuries to his face at that time. The observation fixed McGladdery's appearance before later explanations were offered.
Well, when you got two police officers saying, well, I think his story is a bit sus.
Well, yeah, you've got him telling one officer, that he was in a dark suit, and then you've got this other officer that actually
saw him.
And he, recalled that he was wearing a light suit. So,
well, that's the first pieces of his story crumbling already.
Yeah.
So it's not looking good. But further evidence narrowed the window even more. 2 special constables stationed at the Scriptural Hall on Downshire Road described what they observed that night. One left the dance at about 1:35 a.m. and walked Miss Bessie Henning, later recalling a bicycle ahead of them on the road. Another remained on duty at the gate until about 1:55 a.m. and saw no one pass at all. These were simple statements, taken together, left little room for McGladdery's account to settle cleanly.
Police tested those accounts in the simplest way possible. They walked the routes, they cycled them, and they timed how long it would take to get from the Orange Hall to McGladdery's home, and from the hall to the Damali crossroads. Nothing was assumed. Everything was measured. The question was straightforward. Could McGladdery's version physically fit the time available?
I don't think so. But hey. They did, man, the police, they're like, hey, okay, well, fine. Let's test this out. Boom. Walk it. Got a little stopwatch. Boom. Okay, it took this long. Now cycle it. But okay, now we have this as a baseline.
Yeah.
And now let's check it against the times of what he said. Just simple things like that.
It's like back to basics policing, isn't it, really? You know, I think they probably do stuff like that still now. They still use the basics of policing, and obviously on top of all the modern stuff they can do now, they're still going to have that baseline of, you know, let's time this, let's time that, you know, try and get a window, basically, of time.
And say, here's the window.
Yeah.
Let's fit what he says. Yeah. And if it doesn't fit.
Yeah. Then it's another red flag.
Yeah. Well, as part of that work, a bicycle that was found near the crossroads was taken into evidence. It was identified as the stolen bike from John McGladdery. Sergeant John Berry examined it and recorded its condition. Among the details noted was the position of the dynamo lighting switch. It was in the off position. Significant because the bicycle had been used on a dark, unlit road during the early hours.
I remember that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I think we had one when we was kids, and you just pedal and it lights it up. Yeah. It like charges it.
But why would you turn that off when you're running around in the dark?
Yeah.
That's a bit weird.
Well, at this stage, police still had no witnesses to the attack and nothing that placed McGladdery directly at the scene. They couldn't hold him. Instead, they watched him. The surveillance was not subtle. McGladdery knew he was being followed. He complained openly about it and contacted the press. A Daily Mail interview was published while he was still free, in which he described police harassment and protested his innocence. The attention caused concern, but it didn't change the approach. Officers still watched. They recorded movements, and they waited.
Hey, man, I'm innocent. Why are they following me? Wah. Come on, man. Well, that kind of, to me, goes, doth protest too much?
If you didn't do something wrong, you wouldn't give a shit if anyone's flipping following you about or watching what you're doing, you know, if you're not up to something that you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So
you wouldn't be too worried about it.
No.
But he's like, they shouldn't be following me.
Which is another red flag to me. If you're going to complain about, you know, the police are doing an investigation and they're actually just watching you. No, I mean, they're not going to just be watching him. They're going to be keeping an eye on, you know, the surrounding people that were in that vicinity, but to home in on that McGladdery, of course, you know, but you can't complain at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It just makes you look
He's
guilty.
Just a big red flag.
Yeah.
Well, while under this observation, police continued testing his story. McGladdery agreed to walk his claimed route home with Head Constable Farrelly. They returned to the Orange Hall and spoke with the caretaker, Mr. Wilson. McGladdery attempted to suggest he'd left later than previously stated. The caretaker didn't support that account. The moment wasn't dramatic. It mattered because McGladdery's timeline still wouldn't settle when pressed.
Yep. So in early February, officers following McGladdery saw him leave Dirty Dick's Cafe in Newry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, cafe called Dirty Dick's. I mean, maybe it was a greasy spoon.
Well, yeah.
Cafe.
Greasy spoon, all right. I don't know.
I mean, why would it be called Dirty Dick's? I'm sorry for laughing, but that is one funny name for a cafe. I get the Dicks because maybe it was a guy called Dick that owned it, but...
Richard.
Honestly. Anyways, so they saw him leaving the cafe and move off into the street, into the nearby ground. He wasn't simply wandering. He went to a specific area. The location was noted. The following day, officers searched that ground. Hidden inside a pillowcase that they found, they found a light-coloured overcoat, a waistcoat and a handkerchief, all heavily blood-stained. Some accounts placed the pillowcase inside an old septic tank. That discovery resolved the central contradiction in the case. Witnesses disagreed on exact shades, but not on one thing. The suit worn at the dance had been light-coloured. The recovered clothing matched multiple descriptions and directly contradicted McGladdery's account.
Well, that's another red flag. There we go. He didn't, the time he left, the time he got to the crossroads or going home,
what a plonker, though. I mean, he knew that he was being watched, and this guy has not got...
I don't think he's the sharpest knife in the drawer. Yeah. He thought he could outsmart the police, probably. I don't know.
God knows what he was thinking, but Jesus.
The cops are watching me. Let's go to where the clothes are that I was wearing when I murdered somebody. Excellent idea, brother. Well, McGladdery was arrested, obviously, and charged with the murder of Pearl Gamble. Additional observations were also recorded before the case moved forward. A police doctor who examined McGladdery later noted that he was unusually clean with his reddened skin consistent with heavy scrubbing. The doctor also recorded McGladdery's explanation for scratches on his face, which he attributed to an accident involving a chest expander, a spring-loaded exercise device commonly used at the time. These were observations, not conclusion.
I remember the adverts and the people were like doing the chest exercises.
The best thing would be, I would say, because a lot of people know the Goonies.
Yeah,
is the brother
the
when
guy gets tied up in the
and they
chair,
tie him up
he?
with it.
Yeah,
that's what one of those are, the chest expanders.
Yeah. For anyone like that's young, that wouldn't have known.
It's like four like big springs with handles on each side, and you push it out.
Dangerous things if you got chest hair.
Yes.
Well, other material raised later in evidence suggested preparation rather than impulse. A woman constable described seeing McGladdery at the hardware counter in Woolworths earlier on the day of the murder. A copy of The Long Wait, later found among his belongings and marked with multiple puncture holes, was said to match the type of weapon used in the attack.
By the time the case reached charge, it no longer depended on eyewitnesses. It rested on placement and sequence. Where Pearl was last seen, where the attack happened, how the route could have been traveled, what was discarded, what was hidden, and how McGladdery's account no longer held together.
I don't think his account held together from the start at all anyway, did it? But
he tried to bullshit it, and the cops were like, yeah, buddy, okay. Well, we're just going to continue our investigation, which probably won't take very long.
They still need to keep an eye on it, and because they back right in the beginning of it, they couldn't arrest him and they had no hard evidence. Yeah. So they had to just surveil him and see what he gets up to. But Robert Andrew McGladdery goes on trial in October of 1961 at Downpatrick Crown Court. The case is heard there, away from Newry, where publicity and public feeling had been intense from the onset. He is charged with the willful murder of 19-year-old Pearl Gamble, killed in the early hours of the 28th of January.
The trial runs for 7 days, from the 9th to the 16th of October, before Lord Justice Lancelot Curran. And just a little fact on that, we have an episode, is episode 19, The Judge's Daughter. So his daughter, Patricia, was murdered in 1952, I do believe. So yeah, if you want to hear about that,
Head back to episode 19.
Yeah, click back to 19 after this one. And it's crazy how it was. I was like, how did this cross over? That's crazy.
Yeah.
But he was a big profile judge.
Yeah.
And he oversaw a lot of, big cases and that. So it's not crazy that he would oversee this one.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, the jury is all male, drawn from across the country, and which is pretty normal back then. From the beginning, the prosecution makes its position clear. No one claims to have seen the killing itself. That is not a case built on eyewitnesses, but is built on accumulation, timing, movement, opportunity, and physical evidence taken together rather than in isolation.
The prosecution is led by the Attorney General W.B. McGuinness. His case is straightforward. Pearl Gamble left a dance shortly after 2:30 a.m., was dropped near her home and never arrived back. What follows, the Crown argues, is not confusion or chance, but deliberate action. The evidence, McGuinness tells the jury, shows that McGladdery followed her, attacked her, and killed her.
Witnesses are called to fix the time and place, not to dramatize the night. People from the dance describe who was there, who left when, and who crossed paths. The driver who gave Pearl a lift confirms where and when he dropped her off. None of them saw violence. Their role is narrower, to establish proximity, sequence, and the shrinking window in which the attack could have happened.
A central issue at trial is clothing. 13 witnesses describe what McGladdery was wearing that night. They differ on detail but not on colour. A light-coloured suit. That account directly contradicts McGladdery's own version, in which he claims he wore a dark blue suit and left the hall later than others remember. The jury hears how blood-stained clothing matching the witness's description was later found concealed nearby.
Yeah, when you got 13 people going, yeah, he was in a light suit.
Yeah.
I think it's over. And then he led the cops
straight to
the clothing as well. It's like, well, how do you know that it was there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, medical evidence was presented without embellishment. Doctors describe Pearl's death as resulting of battering, strangulation, and stabbing. The injuries are explained clinically, not emotionally. The purpose is not to linger on the violence, but to establish the force involved and the intent required to cause it.
The Crown also points to what happened after the killing: the concealment of clothing, the attempt to distance himself from key items, and the effort involved in moving the body. No single piece of evidence is offered as decisive. The prosecution's case is that its strength lies in how each part supports the others.
In his closing address, McGuinness tells the jury that the evidence shows deliberate murder. He argues that the removal of Pearl's clothing suggested a sexual motive, and that what began as pursuit ended in violence on what he calls, quote, the lonely road.
Well, the defence led by James Brown QC, with Turlough O'Donnell, does not dispute that Pearl Gamble was murdered. Instead, it challenges intent and responsibility. McGladdery gives evidence himself, spending several hours in the witness box. He denies killing Pearl, says he walked home alone, and attempts to explain how the clothing came to be found. At one point, he suggests another man may have been involved, an assertion that the jury just does not accept.
Oh, no, they don't. As the jury retires to consider its verdict, after around 40 minutes, they return to the court with a unanimous verdict and find Robert McGladdery guilty of willful murder. Only took him 40 minutes. That's filling out the paperwork right there. Yeah. Yeah, they just said, yeah, you good? Mm-hmm. Pretty clean cut. Well, he is then invited to speak from the dock. He does so briefly. He says there are a lot of things he could say, but that he does not believe that they would make any difference. He insists again that no one can say he killed Pearl Gamble.
Well, clearly they can.
Yeah.
Sentencing follows immediately. Under the law in force in Northern Ireland in 1961, the penalty for murder is mandatory. Lord Justice Curran sentences Robert McGladdery to death. The court has no discretion. An execution date is set for the 7th of November, subject to appeal.
Well, after that sentencing, Robert McGladdery is taken back to Crumlin Road Prison. He is separated from the general prison population and placed in the condemned cell under the strict routine used for men waiting execution.
I like the name of that, condemned cell. That's pretty cool. You have death row over in America.
Yeah, death row. Yeah, the condemned cell.
In the 60s, the condemned cell. That's pretty cool.
Well, movement is tightly controlled. Days are divided into fixed intervals. Every meal, every visit, every hour is recorded. From this point on, the sentence is no longer abstract. It shapes the space he lives in and the time he has left.
Yeah, so it's pretty quick from sentencing to actually execution, isn't it?
Yeah, don't.
There's
You
only
get an appeal, and then once that goes, that's it. See ya.
Well, with the execution date being set for the 7th of November 1961, the weeks that follow, McGladdery's options narrow quickly. An appeal against his conviction is heard by the Court of Criminal Appeal, but dismissed after several hours of deliberation that lasted around 5 hours. With that route closed, a final plea for clemency is prepared and sent to the Northern Ireland government. Included in the submission is a handwritten autobiography, 16 pages long, offered as part of the case for mercy. As November passes, the outcome remains uncertain, but the timetable does not stop moving.
As the date approaches, public attention sharpens. The newspapers return to the crime, the trial, and the evidence. Petitions calling for clemency arrive at Stormont, more than 150 in total. The decision rests with Brian Faulkner, the Minister of Home Affairs, following consideration by cabinet colleagues. On the 5th of December 1961, clemency is formally refused. The execution is postponed briefly, then rescheduled for the 20th of December.
What followed is controlled and methodical. Prison staff move into a routine refined over decades. Witnesses are appointed, timings are fixed down to the minute, and the executioner is brought in from England, Harry Allen, a senior British executioner who has carried out numerous executions across Britain and Northern Ireland. Nothing is improvised, every step is planned, scheduled, and prepared in advance.
So on the night before the execution, McGladdery meets with the prison chaplain, the Reverend William Vance. During that meeting, he makes a full confession to the murder of Pearl Gamble and asks that it may be made public. Until that point, he had maintained his innocence, though through the trial, the appeal, and the clemency process, the confession comes just hours before the sentence is carried out.
Well, at 8 a.m. on Wednesday, the 20th of December of 1961, the execution takes place inside Crumlin Road Prison. A prison surgeon examines McGladdery and certifies that his life is extinct. He was 26 years old. He became the 12th man executed at Crumlin Road Prison in the 20th century, and the last. Outside the prison walls, a small group had gathered. Death notices are posted. There is no public announcement beyond that. By mid-morning, the prison returns to routine. Another entry is closed.
In Newry, there is no formal memorial. The fields near Upper Damali return to ordinary use. The place where Pearl Gamble was killed is not marked, fenced, or preserved. What remains is quieter than ceremony. Memory survives through family, through local knowledge, and through repetition, passed on without plaques or markers.
Well, over time, the case comes to represent more than a single crime. McGladdery's execution marks the final use of the death penalty in Northern Ireland, and the last execution carried out anywhere on the island of Ireland to date. The debate over capital punishment did not begin with his death, but it intensified in the years that followed, shaped in part by what this case had required the state to do.
Well, yeah, it's just kind of, a lot of people were like, "Oh, clemency, don't execute him, just put him in prison,"
Yeah.
And it really brought up, and there was a few other executions in that. But they were just
Had
like,
a real good
we
big
really
debate and
they needed to have a big talk about it. And in 1965, Parliament passes the Murder Abolition of Death Penalty Act, suspending capital punishment for murder in Great Britain. Northern Ireland is excluded, leaving the sentence technically in place there for several more years, unused, but still written into the law. That final legal closure comes with the Northern Ireland Emergency Provisions Act of 1973, which removes the death penalty for murders in Northern Ireland altogether. What was mandatory in 1961 is no longer possible.
Well, Crumlin Road Jail eventually closes. The condemned cell remains, preserved and repurposed as a historical space. Visitors walk through it now, guided and informed, separated from consequence by time. The legacy of the case is not symbolic. It's practical. A crime investigated, a man convicted, and a sentence carried out. And in time, a power removed.
Well, that was the story of the murder of Pearl Gamble and the last hanging in Northern Ireland. Crazy.
It's a mad case.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, motive-wise, they kind of thought, oh, maybe he was trying to, initially, he wanted to sexually assault her, or, I mean, he was on the dance floor.
He was probably coming on to her, and she rejected him, and he got all upset, and he was drunk, and he thought, well.
But then again, you're carrying. I mean, was that usual to carry
a file?
Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, it was possible that he was thinking about it. He was thinking, okay, well, if she rejects me, I'm just going to kill her. Which is fucking horrible.
Either way, I mean, it's such a young age to pass away, let alone be killed in a most brutal way. It's just sad.
Yeah.
Such a waste of life. And, I do believe that nobody has the right to take anybody's life away. No matter how angry you are, do not lay a hand on somebody else, because it's just not right.
Well, there's just, there's people out there that they get it in their head, and like old McGladdery here, and he just said, well, I'm going to go, and he requested that song. It's Now or Never, or whatever.
Yeah, which
by
makes
Elvis.
me think, did he already have it in his mind that he was going to do something, and you're not necessarily, knew that it would be her, could have been anybody else, but, it's just sad, because it feels like that life will never not have, or the world will never not have people that do this type of stuff, which is a sad situation. It'd be lovely if, what's that song by John Lennon? Is it? I can't remember what it's called now. Imagine.
Imagine.
Yeah. Well, just imagine what a world would be if nobody done these heinous crimes and hurt people and took their lives. Very, very sad. But we are grateful for you listening to this case.
Yes, thank you very, very much for listening. It means a lot to us. Appreciate it.
Definitely. If you like to support the work that we do here in the archive, please take a moment to follow the show and leave us a 5-star rating. It really does help others discover our stories that we tell and keeps the archive growing. Sharing the podcast with someone who loves true crime really makes a difference.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Tell everybody.
It keeps the victims' memories alive, tells their story, and, it just, like we say, never lets anyone be forgotten.
Yeah. And then also, it's just interesting stuff that changed history or helped.
Yeah, within law and law changes. And
yep.
Yeah.
Well, you can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Murder Most British, and on Facebook at MMB Podcast. And if you want to chat with us and other listeners, come join us at the public crypt chat that's our free Discord. You can discuss cases and theories and updates from the archive.
Yep, and as usual, everything you need to know, socials, Discord, and more is in our link tree below.
So, until next week, stay safe, stay curious.
Take care.